We just finished up looking at the SCR system and talking about basically how it functions. So I thought, what better video to do next than an actual problem that we had in our fleet. And so I'm going to be putting some fault codes on the screen in a second and then talking about what caused them. So let's take a look. Remember, timestamps are important. So the first thing we're going to do with these faults is look at timestamps. And this is the oldest one. It started 195 hours ago. Next was 184 hours. Next 113 hours, then 96 hours, and then last was 67 hours. So that was when those faults first started to log. Remember, if a fault is less than 25 hours old, we treat it as active and troubleshoot it. If there's one count, it's more than 25 hours old, and it's inactive, then you can just delete it. So our two active faults are 3151 and then 3582. And both of them are related to the SCR catalyst, not anything else. So should we suspect that the catalyst itself is bad? Well, no, we need to go through the troubleshooting process. Remember when we did the catalyst familiarization last video, we said that the way this ECM knows that the catalyst is working or not is by the knock sensors. So the next question is, are there any knock sensors faults? Yes, outlet knock sensor. So let's take a look at that for a second. Now let's take a look at fault code 3582 first. That's the one in the middle. It's active. There's one count, and it's the SCR catalyst conversion efficiency is moderately severe, below normal operating range, or the element's not doing a very good job at removing NOx, or so the ECM thinks. Let's look to the right, time since first fault and time since last fault. There's only one timestamp, 184 hours, 34 minutes, and 5 seconds. So that fault has been active for the last 184 and a half hours. Why didn't it go inactive? Well, because you've had on and off active and inactive of 3151, the top fault, where the NOx was so far out of range that it thought the system was missing. But then it would come back into range enough that that fault would go inactive. However, it never did come back into range to the place where 3582 would go inactive. And when I say in range, I mean that the outlet NOx was equal to or less than the inlet NOx, like it's supposed to be. So let's take a look at 3151. And what I did is I just took the intake and outlet NOx corrected and put them, the snapshot first and last, underneath the fault so we could see what those values were. So fault code 3151, which is the SCR system, is missing. We were moderately above the inlet, so we were 205 in one snapshot going in and 368 coming out. Remember, you can't make NOx outside of the combustion chamber. The last snapshot, you were 208 going into the after treatment and 440 coming out. Now let's take a look at fault code 3582. After treatment NOx corrected, inlet 495, outlet 795. And that's just one snapshot, but that's moderately severe. Now, that seems unreasonably high, but take a look at the center one, fault code 3545. And that description of that fault is that the outlet NOx sensor has an abnormal or unusual rate of change, or it's making changes that are really outside the normal. And if we take a look, 198 in, 1237 out, 121 in, and 2826 out. I want us to take a look at the after treatment history for a second. Go to the far right column, which is the diesel particulate filter restriction. And remember, we said when it gets up to about 2 to 2.5, that's when it'll decide it needs to do a passive regen. All of these were passive regens because the column to the right of where it says normal is your inlet temperature, and it was all over 400 degrees. So the guy was driving down the road. And if you look at our temperatures at number 10, 10's on the bottom, going up the column, inlets 1053, outlets 1070. Next one, inlets 979, outlets 1013. Inlets 1162, outlets 1159, inlets 1168, 1109. So we didn't have a lot of soot going back there driving this. So what was driving it? Well, what was driving it was trying to clean up the SCR brick, thinking that maybe it was loaded up with dry def or there was some other issue. So we can have SCR efficiencies cause regeneration schedules to change. I wanted you to know that because there will come a day when you're scratching your head going, why in the world is this thing regenning so much? And if you see SCR inefficiency faults, that can be the reason why. Cummins has excellent troubleshooting trees. 99 out of 100 times they lead you to an accurate diagnosis. Speaking for myself, most of the time, especially if it was a wiring related problem, I missed something, and that's when I would pass that up and then start throwing a part at something because I thought the wiring was okay. So all I'm saying is use systematic troubleshooting, follow the fault troubleshooting trees, and I wanted to show you these values. We did go through systematic troubleshooting. We did use the electronic diagnostic system, EDS. And then these values just backed up the data that we already had learned from going through the trees and following the process. And this way, when you're done, you have a good fix and a happy customer. Thanks for joining me on Engine Shop Joe, and please subscribe. Hey, why not?